Well, I have all the information I need, so.
All right, take it.
All right, good afternoon.
Hello.
So as we reflect on the deadly EF3 tornado that stretched through St. Louis's west side and north side neighborhoods last May, we're now about 1 year removed, and the question isn't what happened last year necessarily for you homeowners, but it's whether your insurance is ready now for the next storm.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's a great
well
point.
said. Well said. I'm Robert Braley,
I'm Chad.
and we are here with
Mary Agan, Goosehead
Mary Agan.
Insurance.
Excellent. This is Intellectually, the show where we teach you how to hold us, the professionals, accountable in real estate. Let's get it going. Cool.
It's so natural for me to just say the agency, sorry.
No, you're good. No, I like it. Well, you're going to say who you are right now because, hey guys, welcome. We are here with Mary Agan. She is running her company 5 years now. You are a broker and insurance agent, and you own your company. Mm-hmm. And you have 7+ years of ridiculous experience. When I say experience, that's me preaching because I use you for a couple of my own properties, as well as refer you on the regular to clients.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, excellent. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So Goosehead Insurance is the name of the agency. I'm a franchise owner. Goosehead is actually a national brokerage, but I'm local here. My office is in St. Peters. I write policies in Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas. And I pride myself on being very educational focused. So
this camera when you're talking.
when I write policies, I don't just sling applications just to make money. I want to make sure that I am educating people on the right coverage that fits what they need for themselves and for their investment, and talk to them comprehensively about protecting what they're buying and what they already have, and maybe correcting what they didn't know they didn't have.
Well said. I like it a lot. Yeah, so we, like Chad was saying in the beginning, we're about a year after that ridiculously horrifying tornado that caught everybody off guard. Did some horrifying damages to a lot of properties that are still in recovery mode from last year.
It's tragic.
Yeah. Going through Forest Park, which is like the luxurious, and we were #1 park in urban park in the United States.
Yes,
correct?
we were.
Yeah, just won that.
Yep.
1 year ago, just even a week after driving through there, it looked like, the end of the world had taken place in some areas. And that's not even as horrifying. When Chad and we did some volunteering to kind of help out some people up north. And yeah, it was really sad, but also encouraging to see how many people were involved in the community. So yeah, Chad came up with a couple questions, and you actually wrote an article about this that you're going to release, just kind of regarding how to best prepare yourself in a couple certain areas. And we got motivated to invite you on and just kind of ask how to pre-prepare, post-prepare, and just really get a better understanding on what all this looks like weather-wise, property insurance-wise, and I guess even past weather, but really aesthetically how to insure your property correctly. So yeah, we got some questions, but before we start, was there anything that you wanted to add to it, or are we just good to go?
I'm a regular news watcher, and just watching the coverage that's really been intensified recently because the year anniversary has been just tragic, and I cannot believe, I can believe it. It doesn't surprise me necessarily, but this tornado was the largest tornado since the 1950 record, 1.8 miles wide.
Crazy.
And that, we didn't realize that magnitude of the storm until just now. So the recovery process taking so long has just really made an impression on me for those folks.
Absolutely. Well said.
Would you say the length of the delays and the length that it is taking insurance to, essentially help their clients? Would you say that's the one thing that stood out to you the most after this?
The biggest impression out of this entire review and the subsequent discoveries is that the area that happened to be affected was largely generational homes, meaning they're paid off. And when you pay off your home's mortgage, there is no one at all
to hold you
that requires
to
you to pay insurance. And with the cost of insurance going up due to economical factors that we can get into, and weather factors, but due to those costs going up, many people gave up their insurance.
I read it was up to like 73% of the properties in that line of tornado were
Yes,
uninsured.
and it just happened to hit that one area where this was largely the case. And it's super unfortunate because, again, these homes have been passed down from generation to generation of memories and all of that lost, and people living in tents in their front yards. I mean, it's terrible. And there were some great organizations doing some great things. But for those who did have insurance, I do have an example of a client that went through that was, experienced damage from the EF3 tornado. Which I'm surprised that we don't name those things, actually. I feel like
We
we
were
should
just
name
talking
it.
about
Yeah, we were trying to
But,
find a name.
That just occurred to me. But she purchased 2 policies from me, one for the home and one for wind and hail, an additional policy to further protect her. And so by the use of these 2 policies coming together, my client was very quickly made whole, whereas these folks are still dealing with the awful realization of not having insurance or not knowing what their policy covers and didn't cover. Because, on that point,
Yeah.
we're seeing wind and hail deductibles increase because of the frequency.
course.
So,
Yeah.
and people don't know this. Renewals just roll out every year, and they can change that at renewal, and they don't. They give you a letter.
Absolutely.
But
The
who
contract goes
the
to the end,
mail? The mail. Nobody opens the mail, and
So painful.
you just don't know.
And it's also like with homeownership, you don't know what it is till it's too late usually,
Yes.
right? A leak in the roof, you don't realize till it caves in your kitchen ceiling, right? So this tornado was also just a test of probably unknown problems with
Yes,
homes.
correct.
10 plus years.
Yes.
Right? So you think your home's fine.
Yeah.
Like
Go about your daily life.
the desk from the church that caved in.
Yes.
Your heart goes out to that, but I
Yeah.
can't imagine you don't realize the problems that church had because you can't see it
Right.
until it's too late when something serious
And
happens.
it's costly to maintain structures, particularly brick structures.
Absolutely.
So, from your experience, what types of damages were the most common, especially after that tornado? That
Oh,
happened
just
last year?
just failing of the structure, just the
Failing of the
power
structure.
of the wind, just really crumbling these structures. I
Were
mean,
there any that surprised you?
no,
You've seen it all.
unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah.
it just being in the industry and knowing what to talk to people about, it's just, it happens all the time, just not on this scale.
No, that
Not
makes perfect
commonly on this scale. But, I'll have people call me saying a tree fell on my roof, just a storm that blows through. I'll probably get some calls from the storm today.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows? But no, it wasn't surprising. It's just unfortunate
Yeah.
that the area itself was those generational homes.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we got 2 weeks worth of just annoying weather that's going to put a lot of properties to the test. Chad, you want to get to work, kind of questions that might help these home buyers best prepare or review their insurance.
So,
Yeah.
kind of going back to that point, were the most common, and you did in some ways answer this, but maybe a little bit more organized version. What is the most common claim that you saw, that you see in Missouri? And
Yeah.
then what is also the coverage that you do see that most buyers wish that they did have after
Yeah,
the
it
fact?
goes back to the wind and hail. So hail is the most common claim next to water backup, right? Because water backup is coverage that you have to endorse it. You have to add it. The agent has to add it. It's not something that comes along with a policy typically, okay? So water backup occurs when, and because we have all these water main breaks, you see them breaking all the time, right?
yeah.
So the systems under the ground that drain the waters away from our home can clog easily, and they're not well maintained because that's costly for the city to maintain. And so the water backs up into our homes, creating an awful mess in our basements typically. So that's a huge issue for us. And then the hail is a really big deal. The roofs that we have in our area, flat roofs are always tough. Flat roofs are tough because if you think about it, the water can pool and settle. So having the right coverage, disclosing, the agent has to do the questioning, say what type of roof do you have and how old is
Yeah.
your roof and what's the roof material.
And when you say
if-
agent, you're saying insurance agent.
Yes,
Yep.
the
Keep
insurance
going.
agent needs to do the discovery. When people go online and buy the policies themselves, these things are hidden. They don't ask the roof agent material. If they do, people just
Yeah.
put something in. So not disclosing the appropriate roof age, material, and type is critical, and not asking, does my policy include water backup? What kind of coverage does my policy provide for general water damage if a pipe bursts in my home. So it's really the storm activity that really, really gets us here in Missouri.
And it is also interesting that you say like some agents don't do their due diligence, right? Like when somebody's purchasing a home or even picking out insurance, your objective from that first second is, I want to avoid spending as much money as possible.
Precisely.
Right. And a lot of these agents are just trying to close down a client because they're making commission on it. So whatever
Correct.
they like don't have to ask, they almost don't want to ask.
That's
it.
right.
And it's so funny because the most common hate people experience is trying to utilize their insurance
Yes.
claim. And they're like, why aren't you covering that? Why aren't you covering that? And you're like, well, if you just review your original experience when setting up your policy, you were avoiding covering all this.
Yes.
And your agent was avoiding that. And I
Yes.
regularly experience that. We just had a client where you're like, hey, unfortunately, like, I know this about the property and I refuse to.
I'm not going to put someone in that position.
Yeah.
I'm not going to knowingly write a policy that will not cover
Yeah.
some type of electrical issue.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to do it.
No, yeah. And you, the way you educated was very wise. You were just like, hey, the reason I'm advising this, you didn't even say I'm not covering it. You said I'm not advising doing it in general, was because you're like, when that time comes, likely this is going to happen.
Yes.
And even if it doesn't, I'm not going to, under promise or over promise, under deliver.
Correct.
But you were 100% worried about not only the health and the safety of those individuals, but what if something, safety isn't involved and something still happens to the property? You're like, when the insurance provider gets out there, I'm looking at the contractual agreement and they don't have to cover you.
Yes.
Right. So it's very healthy and important that, you have a real estate agent, you have an insurance agent, that both are very conscious of where you will and might be, especially in a place like St. Louis.
Right.
5-10 years from now.
And we have different areas of the region that largely impact premium and coverage issues. In the city, we have older homes that have knob and tube wiring. That's a big problem. I don't have a carrier that will cover that. There are carriers that will, but
Yeah.
I want to know if that exists, because I've literally had people close on a home and I was not my client, but they closed on a home. I was working for another agent at the time, who the day they closed, their house burned down. It was due to the knob and tube wiring,
Yeah.
and they were not covered for it. Can you imagine buying an asset and the very next day the asset's gone,
Yeah.
but you're still under contract, with a mortgage company?
Absolutely.
It's just unfathomable to me. But as we pan out into the county, we have homes that are newer, so there aren't as many underwriting questions to ask. But as you go through the years from the late 1800s on through the early 1900s into the mid 50s, 60s, we'll see the wiring and the plumbing changing, but still not great. We were perfecting our housing materials.
Absolutely.
And now that we're in, the 2000s, the 90s were fine, 2000s, we really reached our stride as far as protecting homeowners from the supply lines for electric and plumbing and structural needs. Really, I don't have to ask as many questions because unless we know about a major issue that was just by fault of the contractor that popped up, it's not as much of a concern. But we are an area that does have many, many older homes.
Understood. Cool.
So that you made an interesting point that they bought an old house,
Yes.
and they didn't have the necessary insurance to cover.
That's right.
Theirs. How often do you see
Oh,
that
that's
happen?
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and a lot of it comes from that really handy feature, being able to go online and write your own policy.
Yeah.
You're just clicking through to click through. Just get me out of here. Get me out of here. Just yes, no, whatever you want me to do.
Yep.
And they have no idea what they have in coverage. That's
Absolutely.
a huge problem. You
Oh, yeah.
can't, not having the advice of an agent is very problematic. Can you imagine buying a house on your own, like doing a FSBO, for an example? Like, you don't know what you don't know.
Now, when they're doing these online applications and forms, is this more of a simple that they're just simply not reading what's on paper, or is there a
It's
mix
there.
between it's there and maybe a little bit confusing to understand?
Well, like you say,
exactly?
you have to open up a dialogue box, but you don't want to. You don't want to take the time, and you don't know what it means. Like, you're not
And it
knowing.
threatens your sale. Let's have reality
Yes.
here, right? There's so many people involved that are more for closing the transaction
Yes.
than for undoing it, right? So you got a real estate agent, they want commission. You got a lender, they want us to hand out the loan. You got an insurance provider that knows, or insurance agent that knows there's 5 of them lined up after them. So like, how do you handle that integrity side? I think your job, ethically and morally, is the most difficult out of all those. A lender, I'm gonna pull some numbers, get it work for you, and then it will work for you, right?
Yes.
Agent, I drive it through. We're getting a little bit riskier when it comes to like making sure our clients are protected. But you're the one that's gonna have to deal with.
I'm the
it
one who
5
sticks
years
around.
Yeah, 5 years from now, hey, we stick around too. Don't.
No, I
listen
mean,
to
I
her.
will tell.
But
Well, what I'm saying is, it's
Yeah.
your job to get them in the home. It's my job
Yeah.
to keep them in the home.
absolutely.
That's how I view it.
But yeah, so, and I question popped in my head that we don't even have written down, and I'd like to ask you because I think it's genuinely interesting. You're needed for the lender to
Yes.
close their loan, right? And that's a very uneducated and misunderstood understanding, I guess, with the buyer and sometimes even the educated agents that we deal with, the representing real estate agents, the necessity you have for a lender. Nobody's going to give money over $100,000 to a person on an asset that could burn down tomorrow and they can't repay it, right? And that's just the most extreme level, right? There's even minor things that could end up $10,000, $15,000 obstruct a loan. So regularly I have to, nowadays, I would say even 4 or 5 years ago, it was in the transaction process last week. You'd be like, all right, get insurance on it real quick. And you call up an insurance provider. He's like, hey, how are you? And they're like, I'm good. And they're like, you are covered for, and you're like, okay. But now insurance is really cutting down, really getting strict with what they're individually.
Yes, 100%.
And I
That's
have to get
drastically changed over the last 5 years.
It's one of the first things I'll send over references to my client. I'm like, call these individuals and make sure this, and this is checked.
Yep.
And on top of it, we go back to the idea of approving them on with a premium, which is just to clarify premium. That's how much you're going to pay annually for that entire insurance, broken up into monthly payments. Unlike car premiums, where it's 6 months, house premiums are going to be a full year.
Yep.
So that's the price you're looking for. That premium affects your mortgage,
Yes.
which affects your affordability, thus your approval odds.
Correct.
Right?
It can get pretty tricky sometimes,
Absolutely.
especially when you're looking at a scenario in which you're buying the home for $250,000, but to rebuild it would be $800,000.
Oh yeah.
That
Especially in
floors
St. Louis.
people.
Yeah, well-
I'm only paying $250,000. Like, you don't understand. You're paying market value. You're paying what anyone would want to invest in an area for the amenities in that area. We are paying to reconstruct this full home. And so that often confuses people and frustrates people because
It's the
they're
difference
usually on a
between
tight.
replacement cost and actual cash value.
Yes, correct. I don't even know if it was true that in the past you used to call and say, just give me my payout and I'll walk away from the property. None of my companies would really would work that way, except for investment properties. Those are a little bit different, like when you're buying a property to rent it out. But a primary home, the lender requires that the policy rebuild the home because they want that homeowner to keep their loan active.
Absolutely.
They don't want them walking away from that loan because the property's gone. And I have to walk people through that quite a lot because it can be very surprising.
Good point.
So wrapping this all together, like we talked about a lot there.
Yeah.
Brand new homeowner, maybe first time homeowner, wherever the case may be, looking for insurance. What are some questions that you would recommend them asking? Maybe not even the specific questions about the coverage they should be asking, but also questions to even help them understand what other questions they should be asking too as well.
Yeah. So a lot of, and I'm going to go back to the wind and hail deductibles. We are seeing companies in our area that I have one company right now that I really reserve for only certain property types that their minimum wind and hail deductible is $10,000. For everything else that could happen to the property, it may be $1,000. So if we have a claim from water damage or something, it's $3,000. Fine, that's fine. You're going to get back $2,000. Your deductible is $1,000. You get back $2,000 from the company if it costs $3,000 to fix. Wind, I've got a company. It's $10,000. Their minimum wind and hail deductible, $10,000. So if people, and this is popping up all over in the industry, there some of the minimums are $5,000. Right? Yeah. And so if you've got that policy, you don't realize that if you have wind and hail damage and you need to replace your roof, let's say, you might be getting half of what you need to replace that roof. And people don't know this because typically the companies will list and it's another sales technique, they'll list the all other perils, and then somewhere hidden they'll say wind and hail deductible.
Oh, yeah. Makes
Okay.
sense.
So it's very, very important to ask, what is my deductible for wind and hail damage specifically? And the reason that they're doing this, because we have so many storms.
Yep.
They're not tied. I mean, they're not like humans, but the insurance companies themselves are unable to pay out these tiny, what we consider to be small claims, which are, $1,500 claims, $2,000 claims, $4,000
Yep.
claims. Those are considered small claims because they get backlogged and they cannot service the larger claims. So they're just walking away from, no, we're not going to allow you to place these small claims for wind and hail anymore because FYI, St. Louis, you are a pretty frequent storm activity
One
area.
hail piece, you're like, you can hear it.
Yes.
And you're like, I'm going to go put a claim on that one piece.
Yes.
I do find two things interesting. One, I want to follow up on this because I could be wrong, but I also was listening to somebody on a different podcast, and he was stating that like the way insurance companies kind of estimated the past year's numbers behind hail damage particularly, they underestimated it. So now they're recouping those lost and misunderstood numbers. But that's just more of a statement. But what I'm more interested in is a completely side topic. I've noticed a lot of HOAs, particularly around townhomes, they assist and advertise that the HOA is covering the roof as long as insurance doesn't cover it. So the idea is, in their agreements with the property owners, the town homeowners, they're regularly going to be like, hey, we'll assist you with the coverage of the roof repair on hail damage, but you first have to file a claim. And if they don't approve it, then we assist with the HOA funds. And that's a pretty hectic thing to think about, how much you guys are starting to cut down. I got $9,000 worth of hail damage on my roof, and I got a $10,000 deductible.
You're doing that yourself.
I can only imagine what's going to happen to some of these HOAs when they go to the homeowners and be like, hey, we're either incredibly raising prices,
Right.
or so it's just another annoying thing that could affect HOAs maybe to look into.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is condos and townhomes that have a master policy, and then they have the underlying unit owner policy. So the associations have their own policies that cover common areas, and they cover, the structural needs of the units. So the interior, though, if you walk into your condo, the interior is going to be your responsibility.
Yes.
So I've really not heard of going to that primary insurance before the association takes over, but I have absolutely seen the master policies just raising extremely in cost just because of the environment that we're in, the economic and storm environment that we're in. And so the associations are walking away from their policies. And so I'm expected to provide an actual standalone home policy for these condo unit owners, which to me just means that if you need a new roof, say it's 6 condos in one structure, and you need a new roof. Everybody's got their own homeowner policies. Hopefully they've done that and they can prove that they did. They're going to have to go through arbitration with the various insurance companies, figuring out what part of the roof am I paying for.
This was more for townhomes that I was speaking to, which obviously
Those
has
are the same
external
policy
claims.
types, actually.
Well, townhomes do have external claims as well with the HOA.
It depends on the master policy.
You're exactly correct, but I'm just saying, like, there are a lot of townhomes because they can do that. They kind of find ways and caveats to probably save money when it comes to corrections on the property through siding or, your area of siding, your area of the roof or something like that. So kind of interesting.
It's getting kind of gnarly in that industry with the townhomes, shared walls. It's a whole different
HOA
beast.
fees in general are shooting up, right?
Right.
And which is completely lowering the viability of nice,
Agree.
affordable properties. So
Agree.
I'm just interested with the way insurance companies are cracking down. Your insurance policy is going up. Now your HOA is going up. Property taxes are going up because house prices are going up. And then you have somebody who got a loan 5 years ago, and they're like, I'm right at my threshold. I can afford $2,000, but now they got a $2,500 mortgage. And they believed 5 years ago that it was fixed rate, and they didn't understand what that meant.
Yeah,
Crazy.
and so we see premiums. So taxes and insurance are what you escrow. It's required for your loan, right? So what we see happening is that taxes have gone up, property taxes have gone up, and so have insurance. So their escrows are, getting heavier for them, and their mortgage, their mortgage payment is fixed. But that's where we see the variability.
Oh yeah, and it's not educated traditionally, or at least educated very well.
And a lot of people are tempted to run out and get the cheapest policy, but again, I'm baffled. If someone will go save $300 to buy a trash policy, and I'm thinking, do you know what you're giving up? You're giving up hundreds of thousands of dollars in coverage for $300 a year.
Agreed.
And I just don't understand.
When I did my property, you were very good about like getting into the nitty gritty. Because I'm a young dude, right? I can handle maybe something that maybe somebody who doesn't have the physical capabilities to handle, right? So I was going through, I was like, this specific thing I don't need. And we were doing the numbers like long term, where can I see myself? And it's also the mentality that maybe I don't know if I'm overstepping boundaries, but an insurance company isn't going to support you making claim after claim after claim after claim. And that's just the reality of the situation. So another question I was asking was like, let's be honest, Mary, I was like, if I make this claim and that claim and that claim, is it going to threaten my policy, my clue report and all that? And you were like, yeah, it is. So we were like, okay, let's make sure something people don't realize is when you're cutting that policy out, you better figure out a way to get that money you're saving into a savings account. Right.
100%.
Yeah, but it is a harsh reality. We got these people that only think saving, only think, and it's also, I keep cutting you guys off, but like car insurance companies, home insurance companies, their advertisements are like, they'll be like, somebody's at a restaurant or something. They'll be like, I don't know, drinks are on me, and they'll be like, wait, I can't do that. And then the insurance guy will come in and be like, yeah, you can, because I just saved you money here. And you're like, did you? Yeah. Or did you just scratch this policy that you're not covering anymore?
Yes.
And I just bought drinks for everybody. I can't afford to fix my house because
Exactly.
But yeah, kind of interesting.
And then it's important, and I'm glad the consumers are being aware of it and saving money wherever they can, because we're in an environment where cost saving is very important. Going back to that point, what are some areas that insurance really focus on, or that they really focus on and look at that can affect a premium, whether it's a positive or a negative effect on the premium?
Roofs.
I'm talking like examples like in roofs, bundling,
car
right?
and auto.
The security
And
systems.
you want to know something about that too? The bundling, what's interesting about that is there are some companies that will not even allow me to write the home if I don't also write the auto with them. So people, if they say I don't want to quote my auto, I'll be like, yeah, you do. You really do. We want to look at this. Also, some home insurance companies care about what prior coverage you have on your auto policy. If it's too low, they don't want you, even as a home insurance.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Why?
I mean,
because they think of
From
it
your perspective, I should say.
it's kind of like when you're looking to hire someone, you look at what they've done for work in the past. It's very similar. When they're looking to insure someone, they want to see someone who knows they need to maintain accurate limits. Because if you have low limits, a lot of people go get a lawyer and sue the company.
yeah.
No bueno.
Sure.
Right? They want to see that they've got a consumer that is aware of the limits that they need,
Competent.
that they have good credit, that they, so a client really does need to be every company has its different fit. So we'll be able to make it work because I've got 40 different companies at any given day. So we'll make it work, but the bundling is a huge part of it.
Because I was going to ask, I was like, where do you see that as just simple bad habits from the consumer, or an opportunity to educate and get them to understand that maybe their coverage, they didn't even know that their coverage was not what they needed.
So true. Absolutely true. So I take whatever opportunity I can to help educate folks, because there are savings opportunities there. Also tenure. If you again, back to the hiring reference, if you hire someone who's job hopped every year, are you going to get really excited about bringing them on board? No. Same deal with insurance companies. So people can shop all they want, but really trying to stay with the company for at least 3 to 5 years is really important. Now, you can shop and move I'm just saying. Savings opportunity. And yes, things like security systems, those are usually 2 to 5% discounts. They're not like blow me out of the water kind of savings, but they are very good for the household. Of course. And I would definitely recommend, we have a partner that we work with that provides free and discounted opportunities to install security systems. So we are aware that that's very important, but in large part, I'm talking auto bundling, I'm talking age of roof. If someone's buying a home and they're going to get, let's say the roof is really old, and we know it. So, well, I'm going to get a credit to have it replaced. And it's it might be in your best interest to force the seller to replace it now, because your coverage is going to be not good at all until you get your roof replaced. So I don't know, maybe every situation's different. I leave that part up to you guys. But that's a huge factor.
Well, it's also interesting because I was thinking about it when it comes to running through the insurance claim. we have, I lost my train of thought just a tiny bit, but we have this mentality where we're trying to get the property covered so quickly, and then when it comes to like, hey, you could just run a claim here, we got like sellers or listing clients, and they'll be like, the buyer will come along, they'll be like, yeah, we don't like the roof, and it seems so interesting that the owner of the property will be like, yeah, I'll just file for a quick roof replacement and everything. And they don't realize that that follows them. So I just had another question. I know we're going off script again. Can you elaborate on a clue report, what you guys are looking at and how that kind of feels and what you believe, if you were a consumer, you wish you would have known before you file a claim, especially on a property you're about to move out of?
When I look at a clue report is a loss history report. So we're looking at previous policy usage for both home and auto. So if you have a hail claim on the house or if you have a water claim, what I see that's the most disheartening is when people have a zero payout claim, right? So they didn't know the steps to follow to get the money out from the company. Jeez. And so they create a claim and there's no payout. That does not look good. Okay, and then I see a lot of little claims. $100 payout here, $760 payout here. Proclivity to placing claims is as much of a distaste as large claims.
Yeah.
So that is what I'm looking at. And water claims are the worst. Unfortunately, if we have more than one water claim, typically it's going to be really difficult to find a solution. Now we can, but I'm just saying water claims, they can be very costly.
Oh, yeah. But
they want to know, why wasn't the issue fixed? Why does it keep happening? Because I don't want to have to keep paying for this because we know it rains, right?
Yeah, and this is where I lost my train of thought. It's back now. Thank you for clarifying that. We really need these days to start looking at insurance companies as investors, right? You're the person they're investing in, and how can I project myself to this investor? Because, if they're giving us technically the IOU if this happens and they want money in return for it, they're like, how competent, how viable are you as an individual?
Yes.
You brought up the failed claims, and it's incredibly sad to see that person didn't get paid out, especially in an area of technology today. But unfortunately, if you want to stay in business, you do have to keep to the numbers. You can't keep handling everybody, or you'll go out of business and then everybody will lose.
It's all risk analysis.
Yeah, and it's painful to say that. So you said the more competent the individual, especially in technology, so, follow the steps very strategically and very cautiously, because every move you make could affect your clue report.
Yeah.
And then the amount of little claims, like you were saying, I already knew the second you said like $700 claims, what looks like you getting $700 is costing them probably $2,000, $3,000 or more, because you said it holds them up from getting to their larger claims.
Yes.
And I mean, we had a question that we probably won't get to, but it's at least a statement. There is, what did you say the amount of payouts versus for the tornado, the actual?
It's estimated out of the $1.6 billion worth of damage, that estimated about $330 million of that was paid out from now since a year ago.
Yeah, so it's still being processed, but
the idea is there are a ton of delayed claims just sitting in that pipeline, right? Because there was almost 20,000 claims that were made last year.
You got somebody over here who doesn't understand how to send a PDF, right? And just send me the PDF.
Yes.
And then you got somebody over here who doesn't accept the response that they're getting or the amount, doesn't understand their policy. And then you got somebody over here that's just been waiting a year and they deserve it, but the insurance company's like, hold on, like, give me a second. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it makes beautiful sense when you put it that way, why those payouts aren't all taking place. But what does the average consumer see? Insurance companies are evil.
Yeah.
Right? That's all they see.
That's all anybody will ever feel. And if the insurance policy works the way that they think it should, well, they'll just go along their day. They're not going to broadcast that. They're not going to celebrate that. So the companies do get a bad rap. But I mean, it is a very... If you don't have an advisor, I suggest you get one, because it can be a very difficult industry to work with as a property owner if you don't know the right steps to take. So I constantly advise my people, listen, if something happens, you call me, okay? I want you to take pictures of what happened safely and start to mitigate what you can safely after you've taken your pictures. And then we're going to get quotes for what it is that happened, so we know what we're looking at, and we want to know what our deductible is. We want to know we're going into this eyes wide open, so that we have every opportunity to make that yes, I will pay you answer occur.
Yeah.
So you specifically mentioned pictures and documenting. Now, I can imagine a lot of our listeners are just specifically thinking and looking towards structural damage or damage that happened to their property,
too.
right?
Yeah.
Personal property. You get where I'm going
Yep.
with this. How can these homeowners be proactive with not only their real estate,
But their belongings.
but their belongings and their personal property
Yes,
as well?
good point. When I try my best to bring this up as much as possible. When I write personal property coverage, which is the contents of your home, your clothes, your furniture, et cetera, pots and pans. My suggestion nowadays, and this isn't available to everyone, but I say, get your phone out and video every single room, open up every single drawer, open up every single closet, and then store that video on the cloud. Because what happens is, if you have a claim, let's say it's a tornado claim, you can't stay in the home, we're going to be paying you for where you're living, by the way. We're going to reimburse you for that. That's part of a policy. But you're also going to have to be remembering, what did I have, right? And they're going to ask you to itemize that, even down to the bars of soap. So,
Those people that do Amazon product testing? It's pictures some dude with a bunch of free products in his house.
oh yeah,
And he's like, I'm going to cash out.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
Don't do that.
For
That's
sure.
unethical. But,
Yeah.
and illegal, technically, be
Yeah.
insurance fraud. But sorry to cut you off. I just
no,
started
no,
laughing
no.
when you.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not something to really be overly. Don't think too much about it. Just video
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to care what you had. They're just going to make you remember what you had.
Now, how often would you recommend someone, I guess, updating their inventory?
I mean, just at least when they buy the house, at least, because they're going to remember, oh, I got a new fridge a couple years ago, or I got a new stove a couple years ago, or I replaced my couch. Like, I don't think our homes change that much. Now, if we completely remodel it, yeah, different story. That's just a whole different story,
Beautiful. Another question that kind of popped in my head was that, or not question, statement confirmation. That's really going to be necessary for renter's insurance. Because, like, if you think about it, yeah, renter's insurance is to protect yourself if you cause damage to the property or something like that. But one of the bigger claims on renter's insurance is if somebody breaks into your property, or the landlord doesn't do their job, or not necessarily doesn't do their job, but a lot of landlords require renter's insurance because they're like, I'm not covering the belongings inside the property. So it's like very important to take pictures of yourself, especially as a renter, not of yourself, of your items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works for the same, same
Yeah.
way.
Cool.
Yep.
So are there any upgrades or any home improvement ideas or areas that homeowners can do now that will help them prepare for a potential disaster right now?
I guess, yeah, maybe the question might be like, what areas do you see often where you're like, man, if they just did this or this, it might have avoided them having to do a claim or anything like that. And that also could be a loaded question for somebody like you, because this might be more of a question for
I'm
an
in
adjuster.
the reactionary phase
Yeah.
of the industry.
Yeah.
And I'll help you brainstorm like things like trimming down unnecessary trees and
I
whatnot.
see. Okay, yes.
And things that
Yes.
can be, act as weapons.
And
right?
actually, the insurance companies do a pretty darn good job of this nowadays. Where they'll review the properties annually, and they'll say, "Hey, you've got a tree that's way too close to your roof, You might want to trim that back.
don't wanna
And
pay
if you
for that."
don't trim it back, we're not going to cover you."
Yeah.
Or like I just had an email come through to my client the other day. Hey, your siding's popping out. I need you to pop that back in. And oh, by the way, you don't have a railing on your steps and back.
Yeah.
Right? The railing on the steps would be liability concern. Getting
You
sued.
go up and their gutters are clogged. You're like,
Yes, right.
they-
Maintain your home regularly. Keep it free from overhanging debris. Make sure that you're keeping your HVAC system updated. Don't let that get too old, because that just becomes hazardous. We think 20 to 30 years old that's getting too old.
check your windows, make sure they're insulated properly.
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure working.
that's right. Working with a company who can come review the home annually and just check things out, label your breakers, stuff like that mom and dad and grandpa told us to do that we didn't really take seriously.
One of the easiest and most neglected is still, we'll say it, and every viewer is like, well, duh, but I'll bet you every single one of us got to do this, clean your darn gutters,
Yeah.
right? Gutters
Or
is
get
a
leaf
big-
guard or something.
Get a leaf guard, but still to that point, check
Yeah,
on it every
yeah.
now and then. downspouts.
And look in the
yeah.
attic, make sure that nothing's going on in there that you don't know about. Like, don't
Yeah.
pile tons of stuff up there and you can't see a corner that might
Nope.
be, having issues with rodents or something. Like, these things happen. It's not like anybody's doing anything
Absolutely.
wrong. It's just you don't know what you don't know.
And I would recommend a seasonal every 6 months or even more or less a year, is going and getting a roof inspection.
Yes.
Or getting these inspections
Well, 100%.
done.
Because of all the storms that we're having, you may not realize that you actually did get hail damage. So
Oh, yeah.
And
I recommend,
You've
yes.
had a leak in your roof the past 6 months that you
yeah.
could have caught way sooner. Now
That's-
it's causing you thousands and
And there
thousands
is a
more.
time frame that is expected from
Absolutely.
the insured to report damage to an insurance company.
Of course.
Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's less than a year.
Yeah.
So we really do want to keep
Especially with the
eyes.
Yeah, we had a roofer on this podcast, and he was obviously he's biased for the roofs and stuff, but he does other work on properties as well. But like the roof can be the most costly thing if you don't pay attention to
Yes.
it, right? Because you're leaking through that attic, then you're leaking through the drywall.
That's
and by
right.
the time you actually know what's going on,
You got a wall that's caving in.
and then you go to the insurance company, and they're like,
Yeah, when did
"This
this
has been
happen?
going on for like 9
Yeah.
months." And
When we have claims, that we always have to state the date. We have to get a professional statement of the date the peril occurred, and then what it's going to be to fix it. Those are the two
oh yeah,
things that we need.
absolutely.
Yeah, because you can't just say, "Oh, my roof doesn't look good." I'm like, "Well, what does that mean? Does it just need to be replaced because it's old?
Yeah,
Like, what are we talking about?"
so true. So Chad, we're at 40 minutes. We could ask one more question.
I do got I
One.
got a more of an opinion-based question off your experience.
Yeah.
If you could rewrite the standard of homeowners insurance policy for St. Louis, what would you change first?
I get rid of these high wind hail deductibles, man. They're a killer.
Get rid of the side and wind. you
The
said?
wind and hail deductibles, the
Yeah.
growing wind and hail deductibles. I hate that for our region. And also, a lot of companies aren't doing full replacement cost on roofs if they're older than like 8 years or 10 years. But fortunately, I'm very pleased to say this. We have a company that has entered the industry to solely solve this problem. It is a separate policy, but it's very affordable, and you can pay it monthly or annually. But what it does is allows me to write additional coverage for you that you don't have because of high wind and hail deductibles or not full replacement cost on roofs. I can write this policy type from $2,000 to $25,000. So what it is, it's separate from the home policy, okay? And what I'm accommodating for is what you would have to pay out of pocket if you needed a new roof or new siding, okay? So I'm doing math behind the scenes, but example, I can create a policy that's $15,000 in coverage. So what happens when you buy the policy? Your address is then registered with this company so that they know when your home is included in a National Weather Service alert, whether it's for thunderstorm or hail or tornado, right? So they know this. They're let known by the National Weather Service. And then 2 to 3 business days later, not even business days, 2 to 3 days later, they're getting the result of the storm, what actually happened, how much hail occurred, how high were the winds. And then based on that information, they contact the insured directly and deposit money into their account. And then they can decide if they want to create a home insurance claim or not. And you can have multiple claims a year. It doesn't report on the loss history.
Yeah.
No adjuster comes out. That's when I started this conversation with you guys. That's what I was talking about with the gal I had who went through the F3 tornado.
Yeah.
And she came out on the upside of it because she had these two policies working together for her.
Nice.
Interesting.
Nice. Cool.
I'd say
I love
one
it.
last thing. We're obviously in similar, or we're in the real estate industry or in the insurance industry. What can we best do as agents to help you and help work with insurance agents to give our consumers and our clients the best experience and best understanding?
Well, just know that roofs are the most important thing driving our policies right now. We really need to know the roof age. I know that I wish to goodness you could put that in the listing, but I know it's not good for marketing unless it's brand spanking new. So I understand that. But getting the best, we need as much as we can get proof of roof age. That's what we really need. And then also if it's an old home, like it built in 1880 or even the 40s or 30s, I'm going to need to know what's going on with the electrical and the plumbing. And we don't want to lie, because it doesn't do anybody any good. So just getting homes that are
lying is
newer, we don't need
insurance
to, well, it's not going to do anybody any good,
course.
because they're not going to get paid out and they're going to be
Yeah.
canceled.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So-
but even to that point, it's fraud.
But
you
yeah,
know?
knowing what we're looking at, because we have to understand we are insuring a property, meaning we are taking responsibility for making sure that home can stay up.
So a couple
and solid.
questions that might come into somebody's head. What is, what is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What is the best way to get a home insurance? What when you're bringing up the age of the roof, what is that number where you're like, ooh, we're gonna have to start doing?
Well, I know
something?
immediately if it's past 10, I know one major carrier I can't write with.
Okay.
And then past 15, a whole bunch of others drop off.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 20, I'm not finding full coverage anywhere.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So at 20, that's that mark where it's not like
I had one company that might be opening up to 20 here pretty soon, but that's
yeah.
And how rare is that? Think about that. In our storm environment, how rare is that you're going to have a solid roof that's 20 years old? Tell me.
I mean,
You know.
I can do it now.
But like
Watch
metal roofs are great because
Yeah. We're talking
slate
traditional-
roofs. We're talking architectural shingles,
Yeah.
composition shingles.
Yeah. Makes sense. And then the other one might be roof, and then you'd probably suggest maybe siding would be the next runner-up, or
No, I mean it's a consideration really just between brick structure and vinyl siding structure or frame structure. Brick and frame, I have different directions I have to go for those property types.
smart. Makes sense.
And then roofs, if it's flat roof, I have to go only to one certain
What
area.
about the age of a flat roof? When you see
Same,
that?
it's the same.
It is the same.
But
They're
really
not
with
switching
flat
it up.
roofs, the material is really important.
Touche.
Because
Yeah.
rolled rubber is really common and cheap, but the water seeps through the seams.
And then blows
So
up.
TPO, that like foam that you can spray on or whatever, TPO is not foam, but you know what I mean. It's the higher quality covering of the roofs that won't
Very
allow the
cool.
leakage to occur, because flat roofs, the water sits and it can sit for days until it evaporates.
Absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely, yeah.
different. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I think we got everything we needed.
Okay.
We can.
I hope this
finally
addressed
separate-
what you guys wanted to talk
No, you did
about.
great.
This was excellent.
This was
Thank you.
wonderful.
This was
Okay.
excellent. Yeah, guys, this was Mary Agan, insurance provider. You are licensed in what states?
Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas.
Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, but we can write anywhere. We have agents all over the country.
Absolutely.
So I can
but
hook
if they
you up.
want to deal with you
Yeah.
directly, you can insure them. Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas. And once again, this was Intellectually. And thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Robert.
My name's Chad.
And this was Mary Agan, guys. You have a wonderful day, night, whatever's going on.
Thank you.
See ya.